Hey, Rich here, continuing my series on using AI in various parts of my daily job. I've got a couple of tools that I've written over the past few years that help me keep track of things in my job or do some of the statistical analysis that I used to do manually. I've got a tool that I wrote in Perl, because that's how old I am, that helps me keep track of who works on what team. I work with a different team seemingly every week, and I have a terrible memory for names, and so I have a tool that I can type at the command line, who works on Iceberg, and it returns a list of people at AWS and also external people that work on Iceberg and their contact information, their title, and so on. It's written in Perl. The back end is a bunch of YAML files, and I have tools for managing those YAML files, all a bunch of Perl scripts. Additionally, I have another set of tools that helps me generate statistics about AWS's engagement in some upstream open source projects, typically at the Apache Software Foundation. And that tool also stores all of its data in YAML files. And based on the contents of the YAML file, it will analyze the Git repository and the various project mailing lists and compare them to the AWS contributors. As you can imagine, there's a lot of overlapping data between these two tools. So that was a lot of intro. This week, I realized that some of those YAML files were out of sync. I had different people listed on each side. And I took this opportunity to work with the AWS Q CLI tool. And I asked it to look at those two code bases and look at the two sets of YAML files and combine them and rewrite all of that stuff in Python so that I can share it with other team members. This took several days. It took a couple dozen iterations to get exactly the way that I want. But the first thing that it was able to do was analyze the two sets of YAML files, identify the data that was unique to each and the data that overlapped, and combine those two into one. And because my tools were consuming YAML, it didn't much care about the exact layout of the file. I could continue using the two tools independently, just pointing them at the new YAML source. So that was step one. But over the course of the last few days, I have asked Q to generate code that does this analysis, so now I have a command line tool that both lets me look up who works on what project and generate metrics around that project. I was very skeptical going into this. I did not assume that it would write code that I could read. I'm not terribly proficient at Python, but I can read it. And the code that it generated makes sense to me. The YAML files that it generated, they had some initial problems where it overwrote data, and I was able to reconcile that. So overall, I have once again made some strides in overcoming my skepticism, and I have usable tools that have come out of this. What I'll be working on over the next couple of months is making these tools so that I can share them with the rest of my team, and I'm not sure how to do that. I assume, since I work at a cloud company, that I'm going to be able to deploy something in the cloud and do it that way. But I don't exactly know how that's going to work. I'll keep you updated.